Tonight, MP Louisa may be about to change our marriage laws. Hi everyone, welcome to the program. I'm Andrew Whiteside. This is GayTalk Tonight. My guest is Labour MP Louisa, and she'll be discussing her new bill that could redefine marriage in New Zealand. We've had civil unions for gay people in New Zealand for 5 years, but this week Louisa Wall's definition of marriage amendment bill will face its first reading in Parliament. If the law is eventually passed, New Zealand will join a handful of countries who have legalised same-sex marriage. Kia ora, Louisa, welcome to the program.
Kia ora, Andrew. Thank you for the opportunity.
The bill is going to its first reading this week, so I guess you must be feeling a mixture of things. Tell me how you're feeling about it now.
I'm excited. I'm really excited. It was only drawn on the 26th of July, so in the space of just over a month, we've gone from it being drawn out of the ballot, and it's been interesting. People have said, "What do you feel about that?" And I've said, "Well, our Atua pulled it out of the ballot. It was only in the ballot for 2 draws." So, you know, the timing for it to be drawn, I think, is perfect because of the international conversations happening around marriage equality. And obviously with Barack Obama coming out really clearly that he will make it an election issue in his presidential re-election. I just think it's perfect for us to begin that conversation here in Aotearoa. So I'm excited.
You're right, it definitely is a huge thing around the world, and even our next door neighbours in Australia are still grappling with this. Here in New Zealand, it seems to be less of an issue. Yes, there are people, you know, in opposition to it, but compared to other things that have been through Parliament around homosexual law reform, etc., it seems as though it's a non-issue. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have looked at some of the research around the polling, so the Colmar-Brunton 1,000 Kiwi voters. It's a very much a generational issue. So if you're under 35 in Aotearoa, you are more likely to support it. I think nearly 80% of respondents will support it. If you're over 55 and if you're male, you have a big problem with it, which is, you know, I think is still some of the residual issues around homosexual law reform. If you're a woman, you're 12% more likely to support it, and there's been different theories. Linda Johnson from Waikato University said that women are much more empathetic because we've faced our own historical discrimination. But I think fundamentally people believe in human rights, and they believe in the right of every New Zealand citizen to be able to marry the person that they love. And so that's why my bill is a very simple bill. It just inserts a definition. So a lot of people have always thought that there was a definition of marriage in our Marriage Act, and in fact we've never had one. But all my bill is doing is inserting a definition that says marriages between 2 people, and I want to emphasise 2 people, regardless of sex, sexual orientation or gender identity. Obviously
it's the MPs who make the final decision, and it looks at this stage as though you have the numbers to pass it. How close do you think it might get? What's your feeling about how it might, the battle might be through Parliament? We
have 121 MPs in Parliament, so in theory we need 61 members of Parliament to vote in favour of my bill to get it through at first reading. New Zealand First are taking an interesting position. They obviously have called for a referendum on an issue that they say is of national significance. Now, if New Zealand First vote against my bill, I need 61 votes. If New Zealand First abstain, I need 57. So I think the equality website's got things pretty right. There's 60 people who have declared publicly that they will support the bill. So yeah, it's quite interesting at the moment. There's quite a chunk of people who are undecided. There's only 14 people who are against the bill. And I'm hopeful it'll get through.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you was about the Attorney General in this country, who is gay, who has come out and said he doesn't have an opinion on it, which I find surprising considering most gay people have an opinion on it, even though the Prime Minister has actually come out in favour, or at least the first reading. What's your take on that? Do you have some thoughts on that?
We have had advice back from the Attorney General and the bill isn't breaching any human rights or Bill of Rights issues. I guess for him, maybe it is not an issue. It's something that he will possibly have a professional opinion about. But he will have a vote just like every other member of parliament. It's a conscience vote in the House, and so he will eventually have to make a stake in the ground about whether he fundamentally believes in the right of every New Zealand citizen to get a marriage licence from the state, which includes obviously our rainbow community, who are currently limited from that right based merely on our sexual orientation. Now, I think fundamentally the state discriminates as the law is currently applied, and it will be a test, I think, of his professional role. But at the end of the day, as I said before, it's a conscience vote, so every member of parliament has the right to vote on their own conscience.
There has been a couple of critiques within the Labour Party that it will damage the electoral chances of Labour at the next election. What's your response?
Well, obviously I disagree completely. I think that Labour has always been the party that has promoted equality, and for me this is about living in a fair and just society, and we currently have a group within our community that are discriminated against, and in fact one of the principles of the Labour Party is that we believe in basic human rights for all people, and what a lot of people don't know is that in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, Article 16 is the right to marry. And so it is a human right, it is a basic human right, and I think that people understand why I'm advancing this issue, and in fact, you know, as I said before, if you're under 35, it's almost like a no-brainer. Why are we limiting the rights of some New Zealanders to a social institution? But in saying all of that, it's been really important to also emphasise that we have separation of state and church in New Zealand, and the churches will have the right to continue to define marriage as they see fit. And in fact, in our Bill of Rights Act, Section 5, it's called justified discrimination. So we allow churches to continue to believe they have religious freedom. I'm not going to affect their definition. It won't be mandatory or compulsory for ministers to marry same-sex couples. In fact, Section 29 of the Marriage Act reserves that right. And so really this is about living in a diverse, tolerant, understanding, caring society, and making sure that none of us are discriminated from fully expressing what I believe is the right of citizenship.
It's interesting, that religious battle that's going on as well, yes, because it's not universal. There are an awful lot of Christians who are in support of this. Well, what's your sense of what's happening in the churches in this country?
Well, I think fundamentally what's happening is still a continuation of homosexual law reform, because when I look at the position of some of our Pacific community leaders, we haven't got a first principled approach, and that first principle is accepting homosexuals are, you know, children of God too, and that we have the right to exist, and that we have the right to fully express ourselves in a modern democratic society. And some of that is explained actually by the status in some of our Pacific countries. So still in Samoa and Tonga, it's illegal to be gay. So they haven't gone through homosexual law reform. It's not decriminalised. For them it means a whole lot of things, and they're not nice things. And I'm not going to talk about what they think homosexuals do, but the reality is, until we get to a first principle that homosexuals are children of God, and there's this amazing quote, I can't remember the senator or the representative in the US, but he said, how many more gay people does God have to create before people realise that he means for us to exist, or she? And that's the point. And I think part of it too is that there are some groups who are living in New Zealand who hold on to their heritage beliefs and values. And so, you know, we just have to respect and be tolerant of one another. And so what I've been trying to inject into the conversation is the ability for us to talk. And be very clear, some people stand on this side of the continuum, some are on the other. But what is most important is that we can have open, honest, constructive conversations. And actually what I've asked people to think about is the actual relevance to them. Not the theoretical relevance, but the actual relevance to them.
My final question is, what are your thoughts on what it takes to have a happy, fulfilled life?
Yeah, happiness, I think, can't happen unless you have people to share that with. Now, that may not be an intimate partner for some people. They may have friends and family who fulfill that. But for me, I think that we can't experience true happiness until we have, you know, that intimate person to go through and journey through life with. And so that is why this bill is really important. Because it needs to recognise that we should have the same rights as everybody else to express that love, fundamentally.
Louisa, thank you. I think all of us are going to be really excited on Wednesday to see how it progresses, so best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you again very soon.